Well, following what many perceived as a mutiny in Russia Friday night, Russian mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin publicly spoke for the first time today, claiming he was not seeking to overthrow Russian President Vladimir Putin, but instead unseat Putin's Minister of Defense, as well as the Armed Forces Chief of the General Staff. The Kremlin projected business as usual throughout today, followed by remarks from a visibly angry Vladimir Putin this evening in Russia. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Matt Rosendale. He serves on the House Committee on the Veterans Affairs, the House Committee on Natural Resources. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Montana. Congressman Rosendale, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always good to see you.
Tony, it's always good to be with you.
Before we get into Russia and the topic of who's telling the truth about the effort to block the Hunter Biden investigation, a very active weekend in Montana, a train derailment in Yellowstone River, and another high-flying balloon flying over your state. Bring us up to date.
So, first of all, the train derailment, I would like to say we are very blessed. No one was hurt. No one was injured. And we right now are trying to clean up the mess. We have a bridge that went over the Yellowstone River. It's collapsed. We don't know whether the derailment of the train collapsed the bridge or whether the bridge collapsing caused the derailment of the train. That will be sorted out over the next probably couple of weeks. We do have National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Railroad Administration there on the site. We have already mobilized cranes to remove the tankers from the water. The tankers that went into the water contained asphalt and sulfur. Both items, as soon as they hit the cold water, solidified. So that kept us from having extreme contamination downstream. So all of the municipalities have their water systems working again. But we do have a heck of a cleanup to take care of. And the bridge has to be rebuilt because there's a lot of commodities that need to be moved around the nation from the state of Montana. We also have a fiber optic cable that was hanging on that bridge that should be functional in a temporary situation by tomorrow. And now they're starting to go through that process of determining exactly what happened and how much time is it going to take to get us up and running again. Meanwhile, rerouting all the traffic around that area. And then, of course, we had yet another balloon fly over the state of Montana. Fortunately, Tony, I've got a bunch of very vigilant constituents that watch what is going on. When the Chinese spy balloon was detected, that wasn't, unfortunately, the federal government coming out and giving information to the citizens. Our citizens saw that balloon. And one of our very, very talented photographers in Yellowstone County, Larry Mayer, took images of the Chinese spy balloon with some very sophisticated equipment that he has and said, hey, we've got something going on here. And finally, the government confessed to it. And as we all watched it on the evening news as it traveled across the country and was finally taken down over the Atlantic Ocean. So when my constituents contacted me last night and said, we have another balloon that has been detected, they have actual tracking devices. And then I reach out to DOD to find out what's going on. And the response that I receive is that the device is flying high enough and it is small enough that we don't believe that it's probable that it has any intelligence or surveillance equipment on it. And so we aren't going to use the resources to identify it any further. I said, well, I will tell you, that does not give me or any of my constituents any peace of mind. And fortunately, they have gone out now and done some additional detection and shared with us that it is a private balloon and is collecting information as far as weather. But all aspects of government, as you referred, Merrick Garland and the Attorney General's office and the Department of Justice, they are losing credibility. And when we lose confidence in the very institutions that keep the form and structure for our government, that is a problem.
Well, let's jump into that, Congressman Rosendale. There's allegations from whistleblowers that the Justice Department interfered with IRS and FBI investigations into Hunter Biden. Merrick Garland says didn't happen, that the investigator had full authority in the investigation, but that's not what we're hearing. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy raised the possibility of impeachment proceedings from Attorney General Merrick Garland. What are you hearing?
I am very concerned that we have some individuals that have no other purpose to gain anything whatsoever. And they're coming out and saying that the institution, that the agency that they work for tried to keep them from doing their jobs. And at this point, they have much more credibility than Merrick Garland because they have nothing to gain and they have everything to lose from coming out and being public about this. And so when I talk to the people across the state of Montana, they are much more inclined to listen to Mr. Weiss and Mr. Shapley.
Let me ask you this, Matt. Do you think that the Department of Justice is simply dragging their feet, interfering, trying to cover for President Biden and his son?
I do. I think that this is straight up election interference. I do. And I think that we have massive problems within the Department of Justice. And I've said this for several years now. I really do. And unfortunately, as we go through our hearings and we've got the special committee for the weaponization of government, it doesn't give folks a lot of confidence because we are exposing the wrongdoing that is taking place within the highest levels of our government, and the Department of Justice is supposed to be charging and prosecuting, and they aren't. Meanwhile, I have a gun shop located in Great Falls, Montana, where the heavy-handed government comes out there to using complete Soviet-type intimidation tactics, and they show up with 20 armed IRS agents and take documents and forms about people's personal information that have nothing to do with finance whatsoever. And people are very concerned about it.
A final question. We're up against a break. Congressman Rosendale, do you think, based upon what you just described there and what we've seen from the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, would the House impeach him if that comes to the House floor?
That I can't answer. What I will tell you is that the House of Representatives is running differently now. We are fighting extremely hard to make sure that we have transparency and an open process. And so what will happen is that it will be discussed and debated, and then the facts of these issues can be brought forward. And if the facts are there to support it, then yes, an impeachment will take place.